I'm Todd Tanner. This is Wrestling News Now. Back with part 3. How did it happen? Wrestlers who are poor. They made an enormous amount of money during their careers, and unfortunately, some of them have ended up becoming poverty stricken with huge medical bills. This is just a word of advice. It would be good for wrestlers, especially if some of you are listening. It would be good that when you get your money, when you're paid, set yourself up your own medical plan. Don't depend upon somebody else to do it for you. And you'll find out there are a lot of them out there that are very affordable. So that way you can pay as you go. Always make sure that you have a backup plan. And we wish the very best, well, I wish the very best for all of you who are constantly putting your bodies on the line just to bring good, wholesome athleticism, and in some instances, a lot of entertainment. So you ought to be saluted. Now, part 3. I found this article. I'm reading the articles from grunge.com. And these articles are good. They're healthy. What I do a lot of research, and I make sure I give credit to the individuals who have done the research and wrote the articles, because basically I'm reading their words to you. Okay, now let's get right down to the next individual. The female wrestler known as Daphne, she's been dogged by medical bills. So what happened here? Shannon Claire Spurrell rose to fame in World Championship Wrestling under the name Daphne. The character she portrayed was a kind of tough and hardcore goth girl. She had a decent stint as both a valet and a wrestler toward the end of the WCW run before it was consumed by WWE. Later, Daphne would return to the ring with Total Nonstop Action, or TNA Wrestling, in 2008. And she stayed with the company for about 3 years. In 2011, Daphne's contract ended and she filed a workers' compensation claim against the company for injuries sustained on the job that, according to Cage Side Seats, included no fewer than 3 separate concussions. There's been some debate about whether she filed the claim before or after she was let go. According to PW Insider, Daphne's injuries in one instance brought with them a hospital bill of $26,000 that TNA refused to pay. She said in her lawsuit that the company covered a mere $600. And that was allegedly after the company assured her they'd take care of the expenses on her behalf. The bills continued to dog her, unpaid and gaining interest. It took 2 years for them to work out an agreement so that she could finally pay off the debt she'd been saddled with. Good for you. Glad you stood your ground and you fought. That's great. The next wrestler I want to talk about, may he rest in peace, Scott Hall. Reza Ramon. And I'm going to report this one respectfully, because he went through, when he was alive, he went through a very tumultuous time. And unfortunately, he suffered from complications of a surgery that caused his untimely demise. So it's respectfully that I'm going to read this quote. Once one of the biggest names in the WWE, Scott Hall was known in the ring as Reza Ramon. He was a skilled wrestler with a cocky, arrogant gimmick that fans absolutely loved. And he rocketed to fame alongside wrestlers like Diesel and Triple H. For a time, he was in a crew with Hulk Hogan and was easily one of the top 10 names in the game. You remember NWO. Unfortunately for Hall, he couldn't overcome some serious substance abuse issues, and like so many wrestlers, his career went down a dark and devastating path. Fan footage from a 2011 wrestling show in Massachusetts shows Hall in such bad shape that 3 people had to help him even get to the ring. In 2013, Hall was facing what looked to be the end of the line. He was in such poor health that it took another wrestler, Diamond Dallas Page, putting together an indigio campaign to help save Hall's life. At 54, Hall already had a pacemaker and his body seemed broken. Arthritis had left him immobilized, and he desperately needed a hip replacement. He couldn't afford with no medical insurance, luckily. Page's campaign worked amazingly well, and he was able to raise well over $100,000. Thank you, Diamond Dallas Page. With Page's help, Hall turned a corner. With Page's help, Hall turned a corner. And before his demise, it looks like he was in good enough shape, according to Fox Sports, to try his hand at rebooting some of his career. Rest in peace, big guy. Thank you for all that you did for the sport of wrestling. And now on to Jake the Snake Roberts. He's has endured some incredible trauma. Few names in the history of wrestling are as recognizable as Jake the Snake Roberts. He was one of the founding fathers of the WWE, and his gimmick was as simple as it was memorable. The dude just brought a snake in a sack to the ring, and people loved it. Well, isn't that something? One of the founding fathers of the WWE. While Roberts was very much at the top of the heap during the meteoric rise of wrestling in the 1980s, he fell on hard times in the 1990s after years of drug and alcohol abuse finally caught up with him. He said in an interview back in 2015 that the only reason he didn't commit suicide was because he didn't want to let his kids down any more than he already had. Health problems have dogged Roberts for years. He recently told Rolling Stone that he probably suffered three concussions per year during his wrestling career, which is way too many, even if he had only wrestled a couple of years. Roberts has been wrestling for 37 years and said he has issues with memory and speech now. These days, Roberts is touring, not as a wrestling star, but as a speaker. The routine, which he calls Road Stories, is half stories from his life and half stand-up comedy show. It's allowing him to not only prove to himself he can still remember some things despite all the injuries he's received, but also make some cash and stay on his feet. And also, you can find Jake the Snake Roberts in AEW, not as a wrestler, but seemingly in a managerial role. Remember the movie The Wrestler, starring Mickey Rourke? It's a good movie. So sometimes, individuals, art meets imitation. For Wrestling News Now, I'm Todd Tanner.